All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. This is Marc Scott and Closer Than You Think. I have a special guest here with us today, and it is Kaitlyn. And she's in her early 20s, and we'll get a chance as we talk to hear more from her as far as introduction, if she wants to give us any background or information on that. Kaitlyn, if you just want to say hi.
Hi, my name's Kaitlyn. I am 23, almost 24. Yeah, currently I'm a nanny. That's my job. So, but yeah, kind of what I do.
Perfect. Perfect. We
Yeah.
also have another special person with us today, and that is Presley. Presley, do you want to say hi?
Hi, I'm Presley. I'm Marc Scott's daughter, and I have
Oh, you
also
didn't have to identify.
I have also been born and raised in Austin, and currently I'm in college, going into my senior year.
Perfect. Awesome. All right. So, I want to share a quote that I came across recently, and it says, it's from Margaret Wheatley, and it says, "I believe we can change the world if we start listening to one another again. Simple, honest, human conversation. Simple, truthful conversation where we each have a chance to speak, we each feel heard, and we each listen well." That's kind of the idea going into this. Is I want to take a posture of listening and really learn from you. The main question, the main topic for this episode is voice, and the idea of how people find their voice. Taking a spiritual turn, we'll talk also about, is there such a thing as a divine voice or God's voice, a little bit. I will be upfront and just say that I believe God does speak to us and speak through us, and you'll kind of have a chance to flesh out what you think about that as we go along and whether you agree or disagree. But we'll work our way up to that. More than anything, like I said, I want this to be a chance for to hear your voice and to learn from you, and really so that you can speak on behalf of your age group and from your setting, from your background specifically. I know you're not speaking on behalf of everybody that's 23 across the world or anything like that, but so just want to be curious and seek to understand as we go along here. So thank you so much for being with us, and we're going to dive in now. So let me just ask you, have you heard that idea, that phrase of people talking about finding their voice or finding your voice? And if so, what have you heard it mean to other people, and what does it mean to you?
Oh yeah, I mean, I feel like I've just heard that like all my life, just like people talking about that and using it in different ways. Um, I feel like I've heard it definitely in the church setting, and then also in more of like a secular like setting, whether that's like school or just like out and about. And I feel like, I guess I'll start with like the church one. With in church, I feel like when people would say like finding your voice, I think they would typically kind of say like, oh, finding your voice, but like, what does God want you to do, kind of like with your
Mm,
voice? And then kind of outside of that, it was kind of like, well, what do you want to do for yourself? Like what is something that you feel like you can kind of do that can make the world a better place, or that kind of line. So
so like
yeah.
sorry to interrupt you. So like
No,
in
no, no, you're
church,
fine. Yeah.
it was, what does God want you to do? And then outside of
Yeah.
church, it was like, now what do you want to do? Is
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of how I feel like it was kind of split, I guess. Different ways of what people thought that meant. So yeah.
All right.
Yeah, yeah.
And Presley, at any time during the conversation, you can jump in, or if something resonates with you, especially, or you or even want to push back on something, that works. Um, where do you feel like you are, Kaitlyn, in the process of finding your voice?
That's a good question.
And
I feel like, yeah.
what helps you specifically? What would help you find your voice, and what are the barriers that kind of stand in the way of that, for
Yeah. I
you
mean,
or for people you know?
yeah, I feel like that's like a good question to kind of start it out as. For me, I think it's really important about like with the kind of group that you have surrounding you. I feel like that's kind of been something where I've been able to determine like where I've personally found my own voice and just kind of being more outspoken. I think when I was kind of surrounded by people who were just more closed-minded and were more like negative or only thought certain ways, I feel like it was harder for me to kind of use my own voice. Like I felt more meek, I felt not as confident in what I had to say. But when I kind of branched out and I kind of found my own group of people that listened to me and, you know, really took with what I had to say and like was like, hey, that's really important. Hey, what you just said, that helped me, or, you know, whatever it was, that was how I found my voice, was making sure that I'm around people who, you know, help me feel confident in what I'm saying, but also like are very open-minded. So I feel like that's kind of what's helped me.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's good. That's
Yeah.
good. I'm processing. So along those lines, so then you think it is possible then to help other people find their voice? Like that can be almost a collaborative effort.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I feel like even too, like with my own friends, how I've seen them kind of just where I've seen them start, and they were either, whether it was they were more meek or whatever it was, and then them kind of flourish into this more like oh wow, I just had like a brain fog moment. Um into a more like confident person. I think that's also just like, that was really beautiful for me to kind of witness. And I think it's just, yeah, like your support system. I feel like that's kind of what I'm trying to emphasize. Your support system is really important.
Yeah.
And you finding your voice. I feel like it's harder when you don't have a good support system.
Yeah. So what part of that journey or that process do you have to own yourself? Like if people can help you with it, or you can help other people with it, is it completely like collaborative, or is there a part of it that you have to own for yourself?
Oh yeah, I mean, I definitely think that you have to do the work yourself. I think that you have to, I mean, like, it's nice, it's good to have good company and to have people who support you, but I think ultimately, like, it's kind of like how people say, like, you have to love yourself, you know, before you can love somebody else. I think that's the same with like feeling confident. I think you have to feel confident within yourself and like believe that what you're saying is what you believe, you know, and not just kind of like maybe copy what other people have told you, or, you know, made you think certain things just because, you know, that's what they thought. You know, I think that it is important to kind of go on that self journey and kind of say, you know what, I don't agree with these things, I agree with this. You know, I used to believe in this, but now I believe in this. You know, I think it is good to obviously be that, like, have that independence, you know,
Yeah.
with your own journey.
Yeah. Presley, is this making you think anything or have any questions?
Yeah, I was gonna, this kind of goes with the points made before, but when you first said like, where have you heard like the voice comment, I am surprised, but my first thought was like politics and like taking a political standpoint on it, which like really did surprise me. But I feel like at least in my generation, like the past few years, especially, like finding your voice is associated with like finding what you believe in, which doesn't have to be political, but that's just where my mind took it, I guess. But also with that, you do have to have like a personal belief, but I think especially with social media, finding your voice could also be like tagging on to more popular trends. And so then like that's where like the community aspect of it comes in, but from a social media point, you're trying to decipher like what's genuine and not. So I don't know, that's kind of how I took it for some reason.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. I would agree with that as well. Yeah.
So let's take that tangent for just a second about social media. So how does social media help or hinder this process of a person finding their voice for either one of you?
I think that you can be easily influenced by social media. And I think that, I mean, I've like caught myself, like there'd be like just random drama, let's say like with celebrities, right? And then I'd go outside in the real world and talk to people about it, and they would have no idea what I'm talking about. And so it's just like stuff like that, you know, or you hopping on some kind of hate train with somebody who's in that world, right? And you believe what's being said, but you don't actually like know the full story, you know? I think that's such a huge thing in like cancel culture and like just all of that. I think that everyone is kind of, there's a term that people say, and it's like, oh, you're like socially on, like you're not socially online, you're Presley, you probably know what I'm talking about. It's something online, you're chronically online. That's what people say. And like I think that's very real. I think a lot of us are chronically online. And so I think that's probably what is like if I had to put like a negative aspect of social media and just anything that goes with that, I would say that is one of the biggest like negative impacts, is that we are very easily influenced by what we see on social media. Like we think that is reality. We think that is how everyone is, you know, and it's not.
Yeah.
I think the problem I have with social media in the sense of like finding your voice and sharing like heavy topics is that you only get a snippet of it, and people will like repost or like tag this or send it to you, and it's just like a quote from something so much deeper, and like they're not understanding the full meaning. And so like things are just taken out of context and then completely just blown up. And so that's what I don't like about it, is there's less of a, I guess, realness, for lack of a better word, to it. There's not as much depth. So people, I don't know, like if them posting certain quotes or sayings or like stances is like if they're really understanding like what it originated from, or
I agree with that.
And it's designed that way, right? I mean, it's like based off of algorithms and formulas that set it up so that you keep hearing or seeing certain things mostly with people that agree with you. So it kind of creates echo chambers and all of that. That's interesting. That's interesting. Kaitlyn, what do you want to use your voice for? What do you want to accomplish with your voice?
I think that my biggest thing is just being kind. I think that there's a lot of unkind people in the world. And I feel like that's kind of like my goal. I mean, I know I'm not going to necessarily like change the world, you know, but like I feel like I can probably be, you know, a good impact on the people that I'm around, you know, like I can use my voice to be like a good, kind, loving person, you know, someone who's a good listener, someone who's like loyal, you know, and I feel like that's what's important to me. I'm not, you know, interested in trying to like gain the approval of the world, you know. I'm kind of just interested in like where my heart's at and like what I would like to do, and kind of just like be a nice, loving person to people, because I just know that there's a lot of people that struggle. And I think a lot of people, even though I mean, it's kind of getting a little off topic, but like, let's say like mental illness, right? Like that's a really big thing nowadays. And I feel like it's good that we're having a lot of those conversations. Because before I feel like it was very stigmatized, and you know, there was just a lot of misunderstanding when it came to that stuff. And so I feel like as I've grown up, I've just witnessed more and more people that I've personally known that have like struggled with things. And so I've just kind of always had a heart for like helping people, and, you know, trying to be like a good supporter of people who go through things, and kind of supporting them on that journey of doing what they can to kind of help themselves. So kind of what I want to do.
That's great. Wow. Okay. So let me ask you, you brought it up earlier. You mentioned school, you mentioned church, as those, looking at those things now as kind of influential factors in somebody finding their voice and all of that. I did, just to preface this, to set up this question about school, first of all, there was a survey that was done by Pearson Foundation. It was called the My Voice Survey, and they surveyed students in grades 6 through 12, and it was 56,877 participants in this survey. So a huge survey. And they found that 46% of students felt like they had some voice in decision making at their school, like the stuff that was being done, they had some voice in that. So less than half. And then 52% felt that teachers were willing to learn from their students. So again, about half of the students didn't really feel like they had much voice or agency in their school settings, and then about half did. How did your experience in school systems affect your journey in this regard?
Yeah. Well, I would say my school experience was kind of unique. I've kind of been in pretty much like everything, like private, homeschool, and then public school. So I guess I'll start with private. Private school, I mean, private school is a little like, they're very structured. They they have their own way of thinking, you know. So I feel like if it was any other kind of belief, for instance, or anything that was maybe outside of what they believed, I don't think they were always as open to hearing it.
Okay.
That's just my own personal thought.
Sure.
And then homeschool, I'm not gonna even go there because that's not really.
Yeah, that's fine. You can leave that one alone.
Anyways, in public school, I would say that I would probably say like in the middle with that, with public school. I think that they tried their best to kind of hear their students, and you know, especially with like bullying, you know, like how there's like really big campaigns in public schools with bullying, and be kind. And there was like a certain one that it was called, but I don't remember now, but you know, they're really big on that. And I, for one, am lucky that from what I saw at my school, that really wasn't a thing. Like everyone was pretty nice to everyone. And so I was really fortunate to kind of go to a school like that, because I was a little nervous. I was like, I don't want to have to see like people getting picked on. That would make me sad. Yeah, so I mean, I feel like as far as finding your voice in like a public school, for instance, I feel like you definitely could. I think everyone kind of did, you know, because everyone kind of had their own thing that they were good at. And they found that family. I mean, I kind of like, I was in choir, so I considered people in my choir like my family. And that's where I found my voice, literally. And like, so, yeah, I mean, I would say that for the most part, they did listen. And they definitely tried, as, you know, if things were ever bad, or, you know, mental health was a really like big issue when I was in public school. And you know, we had a few kids that like passed away, and that was really hard. But I think that when those things were happening, the school definitely did what they could to try to help that, and to try to have that conversation with us, and definitely tried to implement it as like a regular thing, like as school kind of went on, you know. So yeah, I thought it was in the middle. I would say in the middle.
All right.
But yeah.
How about the church side of things, religious institutions? How did that affect you in your journey of finding your voice?
Can I add something really quick about the schools?
Oh yeah.
Sure.
I think where I went to public school, and then I'm at a private college, and I think the biggest difference I've noticed is public schools, like your teachers seem like they're willing to, but because it's public, they can't really stand for anything, because they have to be open and supportive of everything. And so like, while if you got to know a teacher a little better, like maybe in some side conversations, they would maybe open up and stand for things, and like you could just share more about like your true beliefs with them in a like whole setting. I think they had to keep it pretty like neutral. And so that was like they can hear you, but they can't really confirm or like deny what you're saying. Whereas at a private school, they're very open about what the school stands for, and it's a Christian private school. And so all of them have like just talked about their Christian journey like day one of class, and like there's no problem because it's like what the university was founded on. So I think that's a big difference. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, yeah, that's good. I mean, that's fair. Yeah. Okay, sorry, with the church.
Yeah, from your experience.
Yeah. So, okay, so I don't know, like growing up, I went to church pretty much like all my life. So I was like 18. And it was kind of more of like a kind of had to do it, like had to go, had to be there. It wasn't necessarily something that I felt like I was necessarily like believing everything or agreeing with everything. And so I feel like that was kind of difficult, like being in a structured church, right? Where it's like, if you were to say anything that goes against the Bible, or maybe you just don't believe certain things, right? It would be like, they'd all look at you, it'd be like it was not a very like, at least for my experience, the churches I went to, it was not like a open discussion you could have, really. It was kind of more of like, well, you're wrong because the Bible said this. And that was kind of it. So I feel like for me, being in the church, I feel like it made me a little more of like a meek person. Like I was not as confident with what I was thinking about like just certain things, and believing with certain things. But then kind of when I stepped away from that, it was a lot easier for me to kind of just be like, okay, wow. There's something outside of that, and it's okay. So yeah, it's kind of my thought process with that. So.
Okay, that's good. Thanks for, and sorry
Yeah,
that kind of put you on the spot a little bit.
No, that's fine.
With
That's
that.
fine. Yeah.
And this may be the last question. I don't know. We'll see. But
Yeah.
so now, speaking on those terms, and you said you kind of stepped outside of that and found that it was okay. Like you found other things. So what do you think now in terms of, is there a divine voice? Does God have a voice? And I don't know, maybe that's even a leading question, but just what are you thinking or wondering now at this stage of your life?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely I believe in God, but as far as like everything else, I'm not, I guess I would say like I'm not religious. And that to me is my own personal thought process with that. I don't think you need to be religious to believe in God, and kind of believe certain rules and believe certain things like politically, right? I feel like a lot of stuff nowadays has become very political. And I think that with what my political stance is, the church doesn't agree with it, and that's fine. I don't really care.
Okay.
But I mean, I believe there is I think God can talk to you. I think God has definitely saved me from certain like periods in my life, and I think that he's definitely kind of kept me from like bad things happening to me, maybe, for sure. But I'm kind of in the middle with it though. Like I think there's like something that I've kind of always heard like growing up is like, like, oh, you didn't do these things, like God did these things for you. And while I agree that you can like thank God for the things that you've gotten or things that you've had or whatever, I also believe that it's important to also like appreciate the work you've done to get there. Because I do think that we should also be giving ourselves like a pat on the back. Because I feel like it can just be a little, at least for me personally, like self-esteem. Like, I don't think that it's good to just act like, oh, well, I did none of this to get to where I'm at. Like, it's only God, like I just feel like that's not really good for like, yeah, like your own way of thinking and like self-love and like strength, I guess, as a person. Yeah, kind of like where I'm at.
That's cool. That's cool. Thanks for sharing that. I was making a note while you were talking about I'm learning more about how the Bible actually was put together and how it came to be and things like that. And one of the things that's really interesting is just how much it was a human process. Like there's a kind of, I think, a belief that I used to have, even to some extent, that God just kind of dropped it out of the sky and like, here's what everybody's supposed to believe and follow and things like that. And the human process of that is actually so integral to understanding it. And so I think like what you were talking about, just giving thanks to God for the things he's doing, but realizing that he's working through you and working through people, and that there's a lot of talent and skill and intellect that he's given to you to do those things. That's pretty cool. Okay, last question here, because we're going to wrap this up. We've got about a minute or so here. Oh man, no, I want. Okay, let me just do this. Well, maybe you can do kind of a rapid fire on this.
Yeah. Okay.
So this is your chance. This is your chance, Kaitlyn, to use your voice. You get to speak on behalf of your whole generation and say to parents and caretakers and pastors and all of them, and you can pick one of these if you want. What would you tell them to start doing that they're not, or what would you tell them to stop doing that they are, or what would you tell them to keep doing? Start, stop, or keep. You can pick any one of those. What would be your quick advice?
I would say start listening. I think that the older generations, they're very narrow-minded. I'll just say that. And I think that they're kind of stuck in their ways. And so I would say start listening to different opinions around you. Start listening to different ideas, different beliefs, because I think that in the end, we're human. We all can actually relate to each other a lot more when we start listening, and we realize that we do have a lot in common, despite it being like a certain belief or whatever it is. I would say that.
Perfect. That was beautifully said. That's like the perfect note to end on. So I appreciate that very much. And I may have to like have you back again and have a further conversation about other things as well.
Yeah. I'd love to be on it again.
Thank you, Kaitlyn. Thank you, Presley. And hope you have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, y'all too. Thank you.